Jesus warned about hypocrisy among religious leaders and accompanying woes. Have we ever heard this taught? Is it just too painful to admit that we church leaders can sometimes be just like the Pharisees? Let's learn some hard lessons from Jesus in Matthew 23. Do we practice what we preach? Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The teachers of religious law and the Pharisees are the official interpreters of the law of Moses. So practice and obey whatever they tell you, but don't follow their example, for they don't practice what they teach. They crush people with unbearable religious demands and never lift a finger to ease the burden." What are some false motives for church leadership? Do we love our titles like father, reverend, preacher, or pastor? But they do all their works to be seen by men. They make their phylacteries broad and enlarge the fringes of their garments, and love the place of honor at feasts, the best seats in the synagogues, the salutations in the marketplaces, and to be called Rabbi, Rabbi by men. Should we demand religious titles? But you shouldn't be called Rabbi because you have one teacher, and all of you are brothers and sisters. Don't call anybody on earth your father because you have one Father who's heavenly. Don't be called teacher because Christ is your one teacher. What's the real problem here? Mere descriptions like father or teacher? Or puffing ourselves up over others instead of having the attitude of a servant? Whoever's the greatest should be the servant of others. If you put yourself above others, you'll be put down. But if you humble yourself, you'll be honored. The attitude of demanding a title or other fawning recognition is not godly. Do we choose arrogance or humility? You decide. This passage is suspiciously left out of the Revised Common Lectionary, a preaching guide. Why? It contains strong warnings for church leaders. Do we shut the door of God's kingdom in people's faces? But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You lock up the kingdom of heaven from people. You don't go in, and you don't allow those entering to go in. Do we ignore the housing needs of poor widows and such like, and make long prayers to cover it up? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. Therefore you shall receive the greater condemnation. Do we teach our converts to be even worse hypocrites than we are? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Because you travel around on sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Do offerings mean more to us than holy ground? Woe to you, blind guides! You say if anyone swears by the temple, it means nothing. But anyone who swears by the gold of the temple is bound by that oath. You blind fools! Which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? Are gifts more important to us than God's altar? And you say that to swear by the altar is not binding, but to swear by the gifts on the altar is binding. How blind! For which is more important, the gift on the altar or the altar that makes the gift sacred? How important are our promises to God? He, therefore, who swears by the altar, swears by it and by everything on it. He who swears by the temple, swears by it and by him who's been living in it. He who swears by heaven, swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. Do we focus on minutiae and forget the essentials of our faith? How terrible it will be for you legal experts and Pharisees, hypocrites! You give to God a tenth of mint, dill, and cumin, but you forget about the more important matters of the law: justice, peace, and faith. You ought to give a tenth, but without forgetting about those more important matters, you blind guides. You filter out an ant, but swallow a camel. Do we look good on the outside, but inside is greed and self-indulgence? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the plate, that the outside may also be clean. Do we look good on the outside, while inside is a dead person, every impurity, hypocrisy, and lawlessness? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You're like whitewashed tombs, which appear beautiful on the outside, but inside are full of dead men's bones and every impurity. In the same way, on the outside you seem righteous to people, but inside you're full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Are we descended from those who murdered Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox, Anabaptists, or other Christians in history? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Because you build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, if we'd been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore you are witness to yourselves, that you are the children of them which killed the prophets. Do we have a spirit of murder, hating, and falsely accusing those who believe differently from us on non-essentials of our common faith? Fill up then the measure of the guilt of your fathers. You snakes, you offspring of vipers, how will you escape the sentence of hell? Therefore, behold, I'm sending you prophets and wise men and scribes. Some of them you'll kill and crucify, and some of them you'll flog in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, so that upon you will fall the guilt of all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. Why did Jesus grieve over Jerusalem? Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I've longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Look, your house is left to you desolate, for I tell you, you'll not see me again until you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. We're all a prophet to somebody, even if only to our family and friends. Will we take these stern warnings from Jesus seriously and examine our hearts, lest we too fall short like the teachers of the law and Pharisees? You decide.